Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for Direct Connection. Coming up, what you need to know to protect your eyesight during the big eclipse. But first tonight, great reviews for John Eisenberg's new book called The Streak, Lou Gehrig, Cal Ripken Jr., and baseball's most historic record. John is also a columnist for the Baltimore Ravens website, and he joins us in studio tonight. John, thanks for being here.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Congratulations on the book. We do want to talk about Lou and Cal, but we'll start with Joe Flacco, Colin Kaepernick, and what's happening with the Ravens quarterback situation. The first preseason game Thursday night, I take it Joe Flacco is not going to be playing.
No, he hasn't even practiced since training camp started, so he definitely will not be playing at all. He'll be on the sideline, that's for sure. It'll be Ryan Mallett will be the starter and probably play most of the game.
How worried should Ravens fans be about this? It was going to be a one-week injury about a week and a half ago.
Well, anyone who's had a back injury knows that there's no such thing as a one-week back injury. That would be my thought on that. And I think they're being careful with him. And this is just supposition on my part, really. But I think that this is a guy that will play when the regular season begins.
The fascinating thing was that the Ravens themselves raised the name of Colin Kaepernick. John Harbaugh at a press conference. I didn't see it. Apparently, he brought it up unprompted as somebody who's out there, who's been a successful quarterback. Where's that stand? What have you heard?
Less and less, honestly, as the days go on. Less and less about it if you're out there at training camp. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's all my 2 cents. It's all tied to Joe's back. I think they've paid, and the salary cap. I mean, football things are going to govern this decision in the long run, much more than anything involved with activism or social or fans' reaction. In the long run, they have to make a football decision here. Very little room to make any moves. They don't want to make it a backup quarterback if they don't have to.
So if the worst were to happen, if Flacco's injury were to linger or require surgery or something, they wouldn't have the ability to bring in a big name.
They would. I mean, they would. You can always do that. You can restructure a veteran's contract, or you can cut somebody. You could always make room, especially for your quarterback. I mean, if Joe Flacco was out for the season, I think it would be a different calculus, is what it would be. But he's not out for the season. And so I think that you're right. John Harbaugh mentioned it, and they brought it up. But as time goes on, I just see less and less likely.
Let me remind our viewers, if you have a question about the Ravens situation or the Cal Ripken streak, give us a call. We'll have the number up on the screen. You could also tweet your questions. The Twitter address is @MPT News. So if the Ravens were floating a trial balloon of Kaepernick, for people who don't follow sports, has been controversial, wasn't standing last year for the national anthem, the thing with the socks. What do you think they learned from floating that?
What did the Ravens learn?
Yeah, I guess, the question was, how toxic was he going to be? How controversial in terms of the fan base, the season ticket buying fan base, sponsors, and so forth?
That's a great question. I mean, I've had no one give me a definitive answer on that, what they learned. They certainly learned that it's a polarizing issue. It's a divisive issue. He just is, because of what he did. Some people will approve. I mean, it represents different things to different people, all of whom cheer for the Ravens. So that's a tricky situation. You're going to make some of your public happy. You're going to make some of your public mad. So I think that they learned that. They probably knew that going in, and they learned that yeah, I mean, there's no consensus here.
And if you wound up signing somebody who made some subset of the fan base mad, that might only last through the first victory or two. I mean, good football might outweigh that.
Well, I'm a believer in that. This is football. It is where people go, in theory, for a break from life. I know that's not entirely true, but it is football, and I think that yes, if you win, it cures anything. really. In pro football, it's by Sunday night, did you win or lose that day? And yeah, I think my honest belief is that if Colin Kaepernick were the quarterback and led the Ravens to a victory, took Flacco's place on week 1 in Cincinnati, people would be pretty happy.
Talk about the football just for a second more and then get to the Beck. What have you seen at training camp? The news stories I see indicate that the defense looks pretty good and the offense hasn't, but then again, the starting quarterback's not there.
Quarterback's not there. That's a big difference maker there. A lot more moving parts there. And then they've had some injuries as well. The defense is going to be very interesting. The defense is younger and faster and very, very much more solid. The back end of the defense, the secondary, has been priority 1 this offseason for the Ravens. They have fortified the first-round draft picks, a cornerback. One of their biggest free agent signings was a cornerback. Their biggest free agent signing was a safety. So I think the Ravens made the decision, we are not going to. If you go back and look at last year, which wasn't a great year, there were a couple of games that got away from them late that they would have won if they had been able to hold on to protect the lead. The defense couldn't do it. So they've said, we're going to hold those leads this year and see where it takes us. And a good secondary is the beginning of that.
What are the odds it's a playoff team this year?
I think not bad. I mean, it's tough. It's tough in the AFC, and you got to compete with the Steelers and the Bengals. I think they got a real fighting chance. If you could give me odds, I would say 50% at least, maybe a little higher.
All right, let's talk about the book. So the Cal Ripken streak, it's been 20 years. Can't believe it's been 20 years, and having been through it, having sort of lived it in real time. What made you think it was subject matter we needed a book on it?
Well, a number of things. Number one, I've been writing all football all the time for the Ravens. I missed baseball. Some of my best years, my favorite memories at the Sun are covering baseball. I wanted to write a baseball book. I was front and center for the entirety of Ripken's career, just about. And I was just turning it over and over in my head. What would be interesting? And so I just thought, having seen that and how much, the Gehrig story was a part of that, I thought, why don't I compare those streaks? So I started out with the idea of comparing the two streaks. Cal got into it. We went through this long thing. It's all in the book about different ways you can do it, like the surface they played on. Lou Gehrig just played on grass. But Lou Gehrig also played every inning of his career in the daytime. Cal played at night. Cal played on artificial surface. How were their streaks different? So I was comparing them, but then I also realized, I can't tell the story without really understanding this crazy record of just wanting to play every day. And so I really wound up telling the history of this record from the beginning of baseball through today. So it became quite an undertaking. So
the two of them, you wrote, shared an intense work ethic. Their predecessors holding this record the same, I guess?
Yeah, well, the predecessor, Lou Gehrig, broke the record of Everett Scott, who was a shortstop for the Yankees, Red Sox and the Yankees, during and after World War I. And if you put 100 players in a lineup and said, pick out the Iron Man, he would be the last one. It's a 120-pound shortstop with bug eyes and big ears. But he wanted, and a case of the boils. He had boils all the time, was his biggest problem. But yes, he wanted to play every day. He's really the first guy that said, I can make a name for myself. I'm going to make a name for myself by never coming out of the lineup.
Was that to any degree Cal's motivation?
I don't think so. Having been through this, having covered it, I had my doubts at the time. Cal always has said, the record was never my motivation, even as he got close. I have no doubt that when he got close to the record, it was a huge thing. He was going to set that record. I don't think, he wanted it. But if you really go back and study Cal's history, you'll understand where he's coming from. It's in his DNA. His last 258 games in the minor leagues, he played every day. And, of course, more than 8,000 innings in a row when he got to the Orioles. This is what his father taught him, and he took it and ran with it.
Let's take a call from Frederick County. This is Ken. Ken, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Hi, I was just wondering if you knew if Cal gave some thought to the idea of tying Lou Gehrig's record and then sitting out a game and thereby forever in history being just mentioned in the same breath with Lou Gehrig.
Fabulous question. Thank you very much.
He did not. It was mentioned. There was a mention of why don't you stop at 1999 or all these things, and Gehrig went through that too. A lot of people had a lot of ideas and mentioned them to these two guys. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? They just played. They just kept playing. No, Cal did not take that idea seriously.
But I understand that Gehrig, yes, he played every day, but there were games where he would take an at-bat and sit down.
That is true, and that is the biggest difference between their two streaks. I've done some media in New York, and I always preface it with the New Yorkers by saying, I am not disparaging Lou Gehrig, for crying out loud. However, Lou Gehrig, a career .340 hitter, one of the greatest players ever. However, if you compare the streaks, the biggest difference is Cal started every game with the intention of playing 9 innings. Gehrig did take some shortcuts.
There were times when the fans were almost clamoring for Cal to take a day off, when it was felt that that this was hurting the team. What did he say about it?
Well, he just said, obviously, I didn't believe that. I mean, he just felt that always that even if he wasn't hitting, and there were times he was hitting .215, he's getting booed, he said, I could help this team in other ways. I could help with my defense. I could alter how other players were pitched to. And this is how he ticked. As I said, it was in his DNA, and his managers understood that. He would not be happy coming out of the lineup. He was one of the main guys on the team, and that is how baseball was. Baseball, it sounds quaint today, just 16 years after he retired, where everything is quantified now with these analytic statistics.
The ball left the bat at 100.2, right.
If you have a philosophy, and that's what Cal had, was a philosophy, it seems old-fashioned, but that is what it was. His philosophy was, I should be out there. I'm the best guy to be out there, regardless of the numbers. Back then, the philosophy won. Today, the numbers win.
Tell me about the research work, your approach to this book. Obviously, you can interview Cal. You have a long relationship with Cal. Lou Gehrig, of course, not able to be interviewed. Where did you turn?
I went to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, where they have a great research library, and they have a manila folder on every player who has ever played in the major leagues. Now, it's more than 18,000, I think. Now, famous players, Lou Gehrig, huge manila folders. Also, Mrs. Gehrig's, his widow's, scrapbooks are there. And so you can just sit there and pour through history, what it was in real time. And also, I mean, this is my 9th book. I've done this sort of thing. You research, you go back and read the papers, and you talk to anybody that might be around, or the son of somebody who was around. But primarily, reading the firsthand, the first record of history, the newspaper accounts from then, some that his wife clipped out of newspapers, is quite poignant.
That's very cool. I think the last time you were here talking about a book, it was about a horse. And similarly, in researching the horse, I mean, you can't interview the subject matter, and you're talking to other people. Did you learn it? I'm sure you learned a lot of stuff that you hadn't known. What comes to mind?
I didn't realize how much Lou Gehrig played through. Now, he did take shortcuts, but baseball was so different back then. In the 1930s, he played with injuries that you would never get on the field today. They wouldn't allow you anywhere close. A fractured shoulder blade, broken thumb, broken fingers on his, today if you get a broken finger or broken thumb, these players are terrified of it. You're out, they put you on the DL, you're out for 2 months. Maybe your season's over, you can't grip the bat. Literally, when Lou Gehrig played and he had a broken thumb, it was rub a little dirt on it and get back out there. He would figure out a way, grip the bat differently, and continue to hit. So I was just astounded to see the different attitude towards injuries, serious injuries.
Between the two players, any similarities, differences you'd want to highlight?
Very, they're definitely similar guys. And actually, when I really study the whole history of this record, it's a theme that goes all the way back through it. These are, it's almost always a low-key guy, a guy that is not going to be, jumping around and making headlines and doing crazy stuff. Generally, a player who lets his play do the talking. Cal was certainly that way, not a real vociferous guy. Gehrig was the same way. He played with Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth had the headlines.
And there was tension because of that, right?
Big tension. A lot of tension. Originally, I mean, Babe Ruth sort of mentored Gehrig, and Gehrig looked up to him. But as he got older, Gehrig got irritated by him. Babe was out of shape a lot, and and whatever. And so Gehrig looked for ways to differentiate himself from Babe Ruth. And one was to hit RBIs instead of home runs, and another was to play every day.
John Eisenberg's book is The Streak, Lou Gehrig, Cal Ripken Jr., and baseball's most historic record that'll stand for a long, long time. John, thanks for the visit.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Coming up tonight, how to watch the solar eclipse safely. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Larry Unger, here with Judy Woodruff of the PBS NewsHour.
From politics and the economy to health, science, and education, the NewsHour delivers a thorough analysis of current events to help you put the day's news in context.
Judy and the NewsHour team have set the standard for deep and unbiased reporting. We are so pleased to present it as part of our Public Square programming.
Join me on the PBS NewsHour weeknights at 6.
Got an unused vehicle going nowhere? Donate it to the one place that can take you any place. Visit mpt.org/vehicles and support the programs you love on MPT.
The MPT app puts our programs right at your fingertips, so you can choose when to watch, what to watch, wherever you want to watch it. Download it now.
What happens in Japan and Asia matters to me. And with NHK World's newsroom in Tokyo, I get the news live from Japan right at the start of my day.
New ideas come out of Asia all the time. NHK Newsline reports on business, technology, and world events from Tokyo to Bangkok.
Once in the morning gives me a heads up on the competition.
Every hour on the hour, the news I want from Asia.
Watch NHK World now on Comcast Channel 268 and Verizon Channel 480.
Are you turning 70 and a half this year? If so, you generally have to start spending down your retirement account. Even the minimum distribution can place you in a sticky situation. Luckily, you can now use your IRA to make tax-free gifts. Gifts up to $100,000 will never count as income, but always make a difference. That's icing on the cake.
Make your gift for this year before December 31st. Visit mpt.org/support.
This is a box that showed you a world beyond your own. It was just a box, but the world has changed, and so have we. And now the box can be almost any size or shape. And you decide what you want to explore. Anytime, any place. Break out of the box with PBS.
Joining us for this week's Your Health segment is Dr. Lisa Shockett, an ophthalmologist with the University of Maryland Medical Center and associate professor and vice chair for clinical affairs at the University of Maryland School of Medicine, Department of Ophthalmology and Visual Sciences. Doctor, thank you for being with us. I'm sure everybody's heard there's an eclipse in 2 weeks. Very exciting. How does that wind up hurting people's eyes? What happens?
Well, we all know that we were told as kids not to look directly at the sun, but sometimes the excitement of the eclipse, we might forget ourselves and actually look directly at the sun, and our eyes weren't meant for that. If we stare directly at the sun, the front of the eye, the cornea and the lens can magnify those sun's rays and actually cause a burn to the back of the eye, the retina, and then you're ending up with damage and potential loss of vision.
How long does it take for that damage to occur? A quick glance or longer?
Unfortunately, it can be just a quick glance. It's hard to know from the studies and from different reports because people report, oh, I just looked up for a second.
Sure.
Who knows how long they were actually looking. But as people reported, it's a very brief amount of time. So you think you might be squinting or looking away quickly, but it really isn't quick enough. It's not a good idea to look at the sun at all during the eclipse without protective eyewear.
So in our part of the country, it's going to be something like 60% of the sun that's hidden behind the moon, but not too far away. South Carolina, 100%. Which is more worrisome to eye doctors? Which is more dangerous?
It depends on, I guess, how well we educate the public. In the area where there is the total eclipse, so that's called the path of totality, where the sun is completely blocked by the moon, so there's about 2.5 minutes of complete darkness. And in that period of time, you can actually take off the solar eclipse glasses, but people need to be careful and make sure that they're keeping their eyes covered when the partial eclipse is back into view. So in our area, most importantly, there is no time period where you can look at the eclipse without the protective eyewear.
Let's see the protective eyewear. You brought some.
So I have some samples of the glasses, and you can see that they are completely dark. Yeah,
it's like,
they're completely dark.
And I can't see really anything at all through these things. Are you meant to see through them, or is it just meant to cover your eyes?
You can only see the sun's rays, so really is protecting or blocking out 99% of visible light and almost all of the infrared spectrum of light as well. So that's what's protecting you from the sun.
Other question with something like this, and these look legit, there was some brand name affiliation to it, but I wouldn't frankly bet my eyesight or my children's eyesight on any piece of anything. I mean, the risk is too great.
I understand your point. NASA recommends these specific glasses which have a specific certification, and you can look on them. It says ISO 12312-2 on the side. And you want to have that specific certification. You also want to examine them and make sure that they're not cracked or scratches on it, because as you can imagine, if they're cracked or scratched, more of the sun's rays can go through the glasses. And you just tested them out. If you put them on and you can see in the room, then they're not working. But
okay, so that's a good point.
Yeah.
If you want to test some of these, you need to be able to see almost nothing. I shined basically a flashlight through it and could just see the faintest sign of that. If anybody has a question for the doctor, give us a call. The number's up on the screen, or you can tweet. Twitter address is @MPT News. If somebody's just walking down the street and the eclipse is going on, are they in any danger at all if they don't look up?
No, so you wouldn't be in danger. It's really only for looking at the eclipse. But you can't change your mind last minute and be walking around outside and say, let me take a peek, because the burn on the retina can occur quite quickly.
You sent over some pictures of retinas, the back of the eye. They look like oranges. What are we looking at there?
So on the very top, the green photos, those are photos that are sort of cross sections of the retina, and right smack in the center is where the burn is. And then if you look at the color pictures, there's this sort of faint yellow spot, and that's not normal. So those 4 photos at the top are what we call acute solar retinopathy.
Would somebody feel that? I mean, is there any pain associated with the burn that caused that?
Often no, so this can certainly go unrecognized. And we see things that are similar to solar retinopathy in other cases. For instance, kids playing with laser pointers, or also patients who might have some mental alterations or are on drugs, who are staring at the sun without knowing and can get burns without pain or anything.
Is there anything you can do for them by way of treatment?
Unfortunately, no. The good news is if you look at the bottom of those photos, a lot of the injury fades. So a lot of the damage fades with time. Some people are left with some permanent loss of vision and little blind spots, but a lot of it can fade. We can't rely on that, though.
Let's grab a phone call. Howard County, this is Steve. Steve, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Sure thing. Good evening, everybody. My question regards these NASA glasses for people that wear glasses. Should you put one in front of the other, or does it really matter? How should that go? Thanks.
Great question. Thank you.
Steve, thanks for the question. That is a great question. You want to put them so that the glasses are in between the sun, in front of your glasses. So just like he was putting them on over his glasses, you want to put it over the glasses to protect your eyes. Otherwise, your actual glasses will magnify the sun's rays and create a burn onto the solar eclipse glasses.
What if I tried to look at it indirectly with a smartphone, you know, somehow looking up at the sun and looking at the picture?
It's the same concept of using any kind of camera or binocular, and it's the same concept of when you were a kid and you used a magnifying lens to burn a leaf. You're using the sun's rays, which creates some heat, onto another object. So if you're holding up the camera or the binoculars, you're using the lens of the camera to create some magnification onto your eyes and worsen the burn.
Let's do one more call quickly. It's Joseph in Baltimore County. What's your question?
Every time there is an eclipse, I hear warnings from people such as this doctor about the proposition of looking at the sun. But in everyday life, we look up at the sun, if only for a glancing moment. We look for clouds that are forming. We look
Very
at birds.
good. So what's the difference?
I don't know that
If
you're
people
actually in
glance
everyday.
up for
Yeah, you're glancing up for a second. I don't think you're really staring directly at the sun. I've never stared directly at the sun, so maybe it's just a quick glance that you're doing in everyday
life. Bottom line advice is don't stare at the sun, whether there's an eclipse or no eclipse.
Correct. Yeah.
Good.
So in everyday life, people were staring at the sun in other situations.
Doctor, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us for Direct Connection. Have a good night.
Your health segments are a co-production of Maryland Public Television and the University of Maryland Medical System.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.